think we're back on, Director Vickers.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll get started with the administration budget. Okay, so in this budget, in the binder, you'll see we do have some revenue that we associate with this budget. So sale of services, those are things like FOIP requests, things like that that we charge just at the front counter. Our animal licenses and business licenses do come here. Business licenses we have increased by $1,000 up to $93,000 for this year. Rentals and leases, this lease is specifically the TELUS cell phone tower lease that we have. That's all that is. And then miscellaneous revenue, that's just for miscellaneous things that maybe we can't find or whatnot. In here, again, the computer maintenance, we did increase, so you do see that line, it does jump from $134,000 up to $230,000. However, that is not an increase to the budget, we just reallocated all of those different computer maintenance programs. So inside that budget, we do have, for Real IT Solutions, they do all of our IT maintenance. They do on-site services, in-store services. He also provides all of our Adobe services as well. Our Office 365 software, that includes all of our emails, as well as our eSite security as well. In this line, we also paid for Diamond, that is our finance software. Civic Web, that is our meeting software that all of our council meetings and agendas is saved online through that program. Zoom, we also attribute a portion to it's called council chambers, but that's just to the maintenance and running of the computer programs in this room. Hippo is our facility maintenance software. ActiveNet is our facility booking software program. MuniSite is our software online that has all of our infrastructure and properties and things like that, as well as Altalis, and then FleetPro. FleetPro manages all of our fleet for us, so we can kind of track maintenance costs, things like that with it. Contracted services, again, that is our HR contract, as well as our after-hours on-call service. So when someone does call and the building is closed, someone still answers the phone and directs them through a triage of calling requirements. So depending on what their call is, it could go to the after-hours operations on-call phone, or they could be directed to call 911, or just even directed to wait and call back the next day. We also pay for our shredded services there as well, so we do have a few shredded bins around the building, and we do shred most of our paperwork. Building repairs and maintenance has left this line and has moved to the facilities line, so again, that is $10,000. We are still using it, just not in this department anymore. General insurance has gone up from $210,000 to $230,000, so we do see an increase. Equipment under $5K, so we are seeing that up from $10,000 to $32,000, but in that there is 6 laptops and 6 desktop computers that are scheduled to be replaced this next year. That's not necessarily in this building, that is for any of our computers and laptops that we do have. Legal services went from $40,000 to $35,000. However, that is not a decrease. That is just a reallocation into a different legal budget in the bylaw side of things. Our assessor services are in this budget. So we do pay Wild Rose Assessment Services to do all of our assessing for our properties. We did recently just have that contract renewed for another 5 years, and there has been no increase to that budget for 5 years. So we do have some budget certainty on the assessor services, and that is maintaining the same. And then audit fees increased up to $43,000. So is there any other questions on any of the lines in this admin budget?
Who's there? I have a question. Through to Director Vickers. Last year we had talked about the DocuSign software. Did admin talk about that at all again this year? Is there any desire to put that back on the budget?
It was not a pressing issue this year for us. We didn't feel the loss from last year, I feel like. And it is, not that it's a tight budget, but we thought that this year was maybe not the most best year to bring that up yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that something that council would like to explore?
I would just say, just to add to that, I know the other day, Councillor Maceras came in to the office, and there was a stack of checks on the desk to sign that I was going through, and she was, I think, quite surprised that we were still doing things that way. And, you know, has there been any research done into doing that a different way and doing online? I know there's risk to that, obviously, and
Yes, there is some more risk, but it can happen. We have been exploring. Our system does allow us to do kind of like online payments, I
Yeah.
guess, through, similar to our payroll, but it would be for online payments, I guess. It will take some time to develop that kind of process, because we want to make sure that if we're taking your banking information as a business, we want to make sure that it's accurate and that it's the right people giving us the right information. There is a bigger risk, but that is something that we want to explore for next year to get rid of, and then we won't have as many checks anymore to sign.
cost, is there a cost to that? Or is that part of the current system?
So it's part of our current system, so it would just be some manpower cost to
Okay.
get it set up. There should be no physical cost to get that set up. There's no new program we need to do that.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my other question would be audit fees. So, can't remember how we do this with our auditors. Are we choosing them every year? Or are we putting this out for any kind of tender, or?
So we will have to put it out to tender. We are under a contract. I'm not sure of the termination date. I'll look into that. But definitely we would be having to go back out to tender for that service as well.
Okay. Not saying that anybody's going to be less, because I know it's expensive, but, okay.
I guess just as a note to that, like looking at the cost of the audit fees here compared to the audit fees that we pay at my organization, this seems quite reasonable.
I can do that too. I have a question. So I personally had problems with my utility billing twice in the last 12 months. The first time I had signed up for electronic notification, and I think I'll never know if I got it or not or missed it. So then when I paid my late fees, I asked if I could be on the mailing list again. And the second time I got the mailing, this is like last month, and so I came in and notified the front desk that I still was signed up for both, that I hadn't gotten the electronic, and I was told I wasn't the only one. So I don't know. In this day and age, I still depend on mail tons, but there's a lot of people that have written all that completely out. So are we good? Are we happy with the?
So, I mean, there is always issues when we send out emails. I have talked to our IT consultant, and he did say that sometimes when we send out 1,000 or so emails in a matter of minutes, sometimes they can be flagged as spam in the internet system out there, not by us. And there's really not a whole lot we can do about it. We just have to try and maintain that the body of our emails look appropriate, that they don't seem like spam in order to flag them. But other than that, there's not a whole lot that we can do.
Well, this is just my standard utility bill. There was no introduction to it. It was just the bill, and I assume the electronic version of the newsletter would have been attached to it, but
Yes, they would.
So I guess the question would be, is this an issue that we're having globally, or is this some one-off issues?
So I will say, we do definitely have some complaints about people not receiving their bill, but it is only a handful every now and then. Like, it is not a lot that I would consider that a big issue, but
Well,
it does happen on occasion.
I guess my personal problem with that was today I don't trust enough our system to take it electronically. And when I came in and brought it up, was told I wasn't the only one. And then 2 hours later I had it because they resent it. And if it had my second occurrence and I was keeping track of my emails, I'd be disputing my late charges. So,
Which is fair.
yeah, we just need to make sure it's
again, through technology, will it be 100%? Probably not. But you're right, Councillor Bates. We want to make sure their service is the best service we can provide. And if there's glitches, we need to work to resolve. So I think point well taken.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we do everything.
We'll reach out and see.
Your goal should be to get Gavin Bates back electronic only and happy. I know you haven't, but I have. And what I'm trying to tell you is when I came in here, I don't want, front staff said they'd had many calls. But after the counselor came in and said his didn't come, then it got resent.
So the question, Director
So-
Vickers, do you think they're going into spam, or are they getting hung up in the system, or?
I think both is the
Both,
answer.
okay.
I think it can be spam, right? Normally, when we're setting up new people, we always say, check your junk folder
Yeah.
first to see if it comes there first. It can kind of junk that.
Yeah.
And likely, they probably just emailed you directly your bill, right?
Well, and if it's, I just heard an explanation, if we send out thousands, maybe we should break them down and send 5 times in an hour or something. I don't know what the technical,
Yeah, that's definitely something we can look into and make sure that
But
we're providing the right service for sure.
I paid, yeah, we just got to make sure that we don't have that glitch.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to policing. So not much has changed in this department. We did up their fine revenue from 80 to 85,000. This last year was kind of the first real year that we kind of realized revenue for our criminal record checks. So that's that RCMP other revenue line. So we kind of first brought it in and then COVID happened. So we really didn't see kind of a full year of what that would look like with people needing a lot of those criminal record checks. So this past year in '23, we actually saw a fully realized revenue line, so we were good with that. The salaries are there. We do have 3 staff members over there that work at the detachment that are town staff. But the big thing in this line is that RCMP contract line. And I did, in the PowerPoint, I did kind of show the RCMP contract history of where those lines are.
So Director Vickers, should the grant funds not be increasing as well?
So those are grant funds that come from the government. It's just a set amount that we get every year.
But isn't it a percentage of the total RCMP
No,
contract?
it's just a set, like, we get a police officer grant for $100,000 every year, that's all it is. And then another grant, it has been combined into one, but it's just one set amount that we get from the government. It's not based on per capita, it's not based on how many our RCMP costs.
Okay, so I'm confused, because I always thought it was like a 70-30 split.
Oh, so
Or is
that's,
that
okay, so
different?
the grant funds is a grant, sorry.
Okay, this is different,
So the
okay.
RCMP contract, that is our 70% cost, sorry, I didn't understand that, so. Yeah, sorry, the grant funds and the revenue side are just a standard grant that we receive from the government based on that we're a town, that we're the town of Innisfil, not based on our per capita or anything like that. But the RCMP contract numbers does show that is our 70%, not the 30%. Okay. Was there any more questions on the RCMP? Okay, we'll move into fire. So in your binders here, there is actually 2 different sets of reports. So there is fire administration, which is 2300, and then 2301, which is more fire hall. So fire administration is specifically like the manager and fire protective services, the assistant fire chief, their admin service personnel, and just that. And then the next side of things is the fire hall, all the volunteer firefighters, things like that. So in this line, we do have the costs for, so like I said, the salaries for the manager and the assistant fire chief and the admin staff. The staff development and training, those are for the staff there, the 3 staff. Registration fees, so that is to be a member of the Fire Chiefs Association. Telecommunications are for their landlines and the internet in their offices. Membership fees, we did have to increase because now we have 2 fire chiefs essentially working for us that need to be members. We did add, there is an operating project in this line for 2024, and that is a fire services master plan. There is a sheet in here that we'll go over. Let me just read it here. So the Fire Services Master Plan will create a strategic framework for the delivery of fire protection services over the next 10 years. The plan will consider the current and anticipated community risk assessment, so that's fire risks in the community, the current operational model, and the fire protection resources required. So fire services is faced with increasing call volumes, and there are indications of increasing community growth. So phase 1 and 2 of 3. So phase 1 is the community risk assessment, phase 2 is the resource requirement, and number 3 is the master plan. And then uniforms we have is unchanged, that's sitting at 4,000, and that does cover, like Gary and Mike's appropriate uniforms depending on multiple different situations. So they have a uniform that they would come in and present here, and they would also have different uniforms for when in the shop and when on site as well. Okay, so when we move to 2301 at the fire hall, oh, sorry. No, we're okay, okay. Okay, so fire hall, so this is predominantly anything to do with the fire hall building costs as well as anything to do with the fire department. So employer share of benefits, so that's that first line, so that is the benefits that we pay on behalf of the fire department, so that is like the CPP, NEI costs, things like that. We do have 2 sets of training, so one is fire department external training and then staff development and training. So the $50,000, so those are the training nights that we have. So every Tuesday, the firemen have a training night where they go in and train themselves on fire and fire-related activities. And $10,000 that's any external training costs that we may have to pay for to bring someone in to do some of that training for us. We do have their salaries, their travel and subsistence. Again, building repairs and maintenance costs has been moved, so it's not that we're not omitting them, it's just been reallocated. Equipment repairs and maintenance went up from $10,000 to $13,000. Vehicle repairs and maintenance remains unchanged. Equipment under 5K, again, that did increase up from 10 to 20, and that is we do need to start having a portable radio replacement plan, so we are looking to do 3 a year. We do have 33, so that will take an 11-year cycle, and they are $3,500 a piece. And the other big one is the firefighting supplies. It did go up from 45 to 55,000. But again, there is that 10-year cycle for firefighting equipment that is mandatory to be replaced. And for example, the bunker gear is $3,200, helmets are $600, boots are $700, and gloves are $200 to replace. So we do need to get on a cycle of replacing those. The other one, the transfer to reserve, we did increase from 80 to 100,000. So a little bit of history on this line is a few years ago that line was sitting at $200,000 that went towards into the fleet reserve to purchase a new fire truck. When we purchased the new fire truck, that did go down drastically to $75,000. It was up to 80 last year, and this year we upped it back up to 100. So in that 100, 80,000 will continue to go to the fleet reserve, but 20,000 is going to go into a reserve to help for building related expenses. So that's why it's at 100,000 now.
So I saw on the graphs showing the call volumes, like there's quite a high false alarm call volume.
Yes.
Do people get charged
So
for that? Or-
we do have a policy that does deal with false alarms. So, but basically what it is that you're given one kind of freebie in a year.
Okay.
And if you have additional false alarms in that same calendar year, then there is a charge going forward. I will admit that most don't ever fall into that, right? Yeah. But it does take a large source of revenue, or resources, I should say, to go and deal with these false alarms. Okay, we'll move on to emergency management. So not much has changed in this department. All the staff development and training, any travel and subsistence has all remained the same. There is telecommunications at $3,500. What this is we do pay for 6 phone lines that are emergency phone lines at the fire hall that are only used if we ever needed to open up and operate the emergency command center. So we don't use them now. They are sitting there waiting to go if we do need services. I can hear it. Oh. So that's what the telecommunications are. It's the phones in that ECC center. The one thing that we did change to this is we did add an operating project for $10,000, and we actually added it in every 2 years. So you'll see it in 24, 26, and 28. And we do have to have an emergency coordination center exercise every 2 years that is mandated by the province. It can look a bit differently depending on what it is. We can do a regional exercise, we can do a tabletop just internally, things like that, but we do want to identify that it is something that we do have to do every 2 years.
So this area, there has been additional time dedicated monthly for those part of the Emergency Coordination Center and Emergency Management to meet once a month to make sure we're maintaining but developing our skill sets if and when something goes awry in our community or region.
Okay. If there's no more questions, we can move on to the helipad. Okay, so the new helipad has now been operational for a year. We have had 5 landings to date in 2023. That could change at any minute. So the costs do include the daily inspection of helipad. We do have some training for staff, miscellaneous maintenance, as well as snow removal from the helipad. Pardon me? Oh, yes. I know that just changed yesterday. I had some other helipad, and finally I got one that was our own brand-new helipad, so it's good.
So do we have it estimated how much annually we are allocating to the snow removal, maintenance, everything?
We don't normally check those kind of numbers. We'd have to do a bit of digging to see what kind of cost that would be, but definitely that is something we can look at getting.
Well, and the reason I'm asking is we did estimate it before we built it, and it might relate to the ask from STARS. I mean, as I looked at that ask, you know, we spent $650,000 to build this thing, and whatever that number is, there's that cost to our citizens to maintain it, and yeah. So when we get to that other subject, it might be beneficial to have an estimate.
Okay, we'll look at that for
Thank
sure.
you.
Okay, is there any other questions on helipad?
No, but maybe before we get into that discussion, maybe the best thing to do is to find out around the table if we wanted to do something with STARS, and if not, then don't bother doing the work,
Okay,
right? Just to,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, I started that. In my opinion, maybe we delay it if we do it, and the reason being that we did spend 650, and that all came out of our, like, we didn't get anything from Alberta Health Services or anybody else. And I mean, I have a distant family relationship that just used it, which is great that it was there. But I do believe our Legion has spent a lot of money. I'm not sure where they stand today in their ongoing efforts. I know, including the person that just used it, they have a automatic deduct every month. They send money to STARS. And if we have a significant cost, whatever that is, our annual maintenance, then I'm reluctant to add more at this time to our citizens. That's my position.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't want us doing more contribution than what we've done. I don't know, what does everybody feel?
No, yeah, I'm very good with it, and I know the Legion's probably spent over the years, probably close to $325,000 contributions to STARS, and, yeah, it's a well-needed service, I think we're gonna, I'm okay with this, and I think it's easily justified to STARS people too, but close to $1 million combined from the community.
Okay, good, okay. Okay, so we're good then to move on? Okay, so we'll move on to bylaw.
Excuse me, just
Yes.
before we leave that, are we gonna follow up after, yeah, it's, with the, are we gonna follow up with a letter to STARS, just because they did come give a presentation, a request stating that after we were gonna wait for budget, now that we've decided, or will, down the road here, just follow up with them based on our discussion that we're, at this point in time, we're not gonna contribute the per capita cost.
Yeah, we follow up when council's finalize the budget, we do follow up with those requests.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to bylaw. And the first line is that fine revenue. It is sitting at 75,000. However, like as we kind of talked previous, municipal tickets written and provincial tickets revenue, the revenue written to date in '23 is 96,000. And again, we've only received $18,000 to date so far, so. And that partially is because people are not writing tickets. Once they become provincial tickets, we do have to pay 40% portion to victim services. So we're not seeing that 100% of that revenue back into us. We do see that part-time salary for a summer student in this line as well. The transfer to reserve is sitting at 20,000. That is going directly into the fleet reserve to pay for future either vehicles or equipment. Yeah, and the safety and community safety and well-being plan. So the plan is being completed now. We did want to incorporate some implementation, the ability to do the implementation of that plan in next year. So we do have an operating project of $30,000 in there for that.
So the phase one council, we just met with the consultant just last week and expecting first quarter, probably towards the end of first quarter, we'll see the results of that data and community engagement information, which will be then leading into this budget piece of what is next. We don't know what that scope is at this given time.
One of the things we did here is you'll look under impound and vet fees, it is 0 in 2024. However, contracted services went up from 1,000 to 5,000. So we kind of just transferred that impound and vet fees into contracted services because they ideally are vet clinics or things like that. So we just kind of repurpose it into there. So it is increased by $1,000, but not the full 4,000 because we just kind of absorbed that 3,000 from that other line. We also did increase the vehicle fuel in this budget from 5,500 to 8,500. Just due to actuals over the last couple of years, so.
Okay, and I assume we're okay because there's nothing in the budget for it, but do we have enough people doing this job in the community? Because I see call volumes going up there too, and, probably fairly dramatically the last 2 or 3 years maybe, and.
It's really a conversation we should have based on your expectation, your eyes and ears in the community. We know spring is a generator of a lot of interest on enforcements. I think the crew did a great job, including other departments, to mitigate that one area. But I think as the community goes, that's, you're likely gonna need another bylaw, or at least, or CPO one, you know, for anticipating growth, that's the impact of growth, is those types of services.
Is that a position, CEO Becker, that you could hire part-time, or is it kind of all in and?
Mayor Barkley, there's been preliminary conversation about it shared with neighbor. The manager is currently exploring potential regional discussion. We do have regional joint force initiatives, but he's currently exploring how do we work better regionally to maybe not have a full-time, maybe Penhold needs another half-time, for example, or how is Bowden being served? So we're currently having those conversations.
So, something I'd like to add is, at whatever point that we do that, one of the things I think we should be considering is, sometimes there's obvious infractions that I think we shouldn't necessarily wait for a complaint. Snow removal comes to mind. I'd be happy this winter, in the middle of the winter, after I'm doing my walk, to give you an example or two, when you literally can't walk the sidewalk in front of certain residences. And then what seems to happen is, and it was actually in Upland Aspen, but what seems to happen is it becomes the standard, and then other people don't clear theirs. And yeah, like I said, I'll be happy in January to report if there's the same residents or two that 3 weeks in a row they never clean. And if bylaw must drive by that, and I think some of those we should take the initiative to say, hey, this is just too obvious. And if that's a component when we do need another person, then we should recognize it. I hesitate to try to step up for this budget now, because you would have to give us the estimate once we had a vehicle and all the other stuff that goes with. And
Yeah, hiring a new peace officer is more expensive just because, yeah, we need another vehicle, we need all the equipment, we need all the uniforming. It can be a bit pricey for sure. But that is definitely something that we're looking into in the future, of what that department looks like and what they need to provide the best service, right? So.
You're a citizen, you can watch.
Two for Cindy.
She's in pain with all that creaking and cracking. She's dislocated her hip over there.
no, I'll be happy to do that. I just thought yeah, I do have to go right by your place too.
That corner lot.
But no, what I'm talking about seriously is probably most of the winter in a couple of cases that never saw a shovel. And towards the end, you couldn't. Our own guys with equipment probably couldn't get the ice off the sidewalks at that point, so.
I don't think it's working, Juanita. Well, I think I have full batteries. Oh, there we go. I got it. Okay. Are we okay to move on to health and safety? Okay. I don't know, Cindy, are we good to go? No, just kidding. So there's a little typo on the PowerPoint. The staff development and training cost is actually $12,490, not $6,645. So again, 16,435, sorry. So again, the staff development and training pays for the safety training for all staff, including our summer students. So it does pay for hearing tests, confined space, fall protection, WMIS, first aid, basic life support, ground disturbance for regular employees as well as for a supervisor, cargo securement, as the safety officer training, and any flagger training. So these are requirements that we do have to provide these safety classes for our staff. In the telecommunications, the majority of that is the work alone program. And then in the safety supplies line, we do have the external core audit for 2024. That specifically is $6,000. Is there any questions on that? No? Okay. Okay, so we're now on to the operations side of things. I love the cat in a tree picture, so. So in roads, we do have some operating projects again for $115,000. So the infrastructure study is $15,000. Sidewalk repairs is $100,000. Under wages, we do have, of all of our full-time staff, we do have 4 summer staff that's included in this line. Contracted services is up from up from $45,000 to $65,000. And that is, it covers the center lines, that's the painting of the center lines, sidewalk and rink snow removal for $15,000, a snow removal contract for $20,000, dust control for $10,000, clean harbors for $5,000, and then Main Street intersection and crosswalk for $20,000. They do have electricity costs in here. It's sitting at $480,000, and that is primarily the light poles. And I mean that it's probably less than $5,000 for the electricity cost for the building down there for our shop, and the balance of that is for the light poles. And we do have a transfer to fleet reserve in the amount of $290,000.
Are those light poles, are they LED?
Yes, they are, yeah. So a lot of things remained unchanged. Vehicle fuel, so this is the fuel for all of our big equipment. It's sitting at $110,000. It remains unchanged for this year. Any questions on anything in the roads?
How many light poles do we have?
Oh, gosh. That's not fair, no. A lot.
I'm curious. Does Fortis have that number?
I'm sure someone has the number.
I'd like to know how much per pole.
You want to know how many poles we have?
Yeah, because I want to know how much we're paying for electricity per pole on average. Just because I'm weird that way.
Okay.
Yeah, Cindy, Councillor Maceras. Just go count them yourself, Mayor Barclay. Save some money. And I'm curious that the Main Street intersection and crosswalk, that's to paint.
Yes.
Okay, so just throwing this out there because we had this discussion before, I think last year, maybe some pretty sidewalks. Is that a possibility as opposed to just white sidewalks?
Do you mean the crosswalks?
Yeah.
Like you painted crosswalks
Yep.
instead of just standard white?
Well, something kind of artsy, and you see a lot of like things in strong towns following them, all sorts of cool stuff, and
Yeah, this is mainly to just rehab the white that's there. So if we want to do something in between or on top of, what happens with the MMA, the in place paint that's there, it chips off. So that that's to fill that back up. But if we wanted to do something that's more of a community thing that we try and do, yeah, but we can. It's definitely an option.
But
This-
that
this is
likely
not this.
that would be in addition to
Yeah.
what we're doing here.
Yep.
Just an additional thought to that, though, is as we continue to work on our downtown, having that intersection at 50th and 50th as a scatter crossing so that people can cross diagonally, because it's a walkable street might be something, but that's for the future.
you could do several diagonals. You could do one to ATB, one to RBC, one to, it'd be really confusing. Be perfect.
Yeah, they voted it. Are we okay with the crosswalks as they are right now, though? Maybe. We just want some colorful ones. We'll use some of the art policy money to paint some crosswalks, okay?
Just need money. Actually, we just need somebody to do it.
Okay, are we good to move on to parks now? Okay. So in here, we do have the revenue for all of our green space rentals. So the rentals and leases, that's for renting of any ball diamonds or the football fields and things like that. The donations we see here is for our memorial bench program primarily. So if someone wanted to donate money for a bench, that's where that kind of revenue would go. And it would be offset down below, inside that repairs and maintenance line. There is some allocated for that memorial bench program. We do see a Red Deer County contribution in here as well, and that goes towards like the soccer pitches and the ball diamonds and things like that. So they do have 8 summer or seasonal staff in here as well, and you can see that under the part-time wages. They do have a couple operating projects, so they do have some tree replacements for $25,000 as well as some tree removals for $11,000 throughout the town. They do pay for all the porta potty rentals at all the like ball diamonds and facilities like that. So that costs $12,000 for the year. That's covered under this line. Transfer to reserve is sitting at $350,000. $50,000 of that does go into the fleet reserve to help pay for you know, any equipment that they need to buy. If they have to buy a new mower or things like that, it comes out of there. And then the $300,000 goes into the different reserve, and that will pay for if we need a new ball diamond, if we need a new playground, any of that kind of stuff comes out of there. They do see some purchase of equipment. It has gone down from, it's reduced by $5,000 because we use that to purchase I believe, a wood chipper last year, so we purchased that, we no longer need it, so it's back down to that $5,025. And that's if they just need any of those little small tools, like a hedge trimmer or a saw or things like that. Equipment leases is in this line, so that pays for the 4 mower leases that we do have this year, or well, it's not this year, but. Yeah, so is there any questions about this? Any questions about what gets covered under this line?
Well, I just want to bring up again, I don't know whether it's do it here or someplace else, but I think picnic tables, like Centennial Park and elsewhere, I mean, the tables in Centennial Park have probably been lacking paint for a while, like maybe 3-4 years, like it's actually basically down to the bare wood, and I'm wondering if it's possible, and I know there's health and safety and WCB and all that, but is it possible to, you know, do some collaborative work with somebody like the Men's Shed or other volunteers in the community that may come and paint those tables, sand them and paint them, or build a new accessible picnic table? And
Yeah, Demar Barkley, so we actually we had a discussion last year, I think it was, with the Men's Shed, for options to do that, to take away the boards, finish them, and provided that as an option for them, but it never actually came back to us. But we have offered that as an option for them to participate in.
sure, so then if they're not participating, can we do that in 2024?
Yeah, we assign about $14,000 in that repairs and maintenance budget. We break that out for benches, garbages, those type of materials. So we do focus on that, and if Centennial is a focus that council would like, then I know Brad brought that up. There is a
Okay.
number of picnic tables there.
Yeah, I don't think it's just there, but that's, I guess, because I'm hanging around there a little bit, I see it.
I think if possible, a couple of tables and some benches too over by the new playground at the arena, the outdoor rink, the basketball, like that pad, that area there. It's hard for grandparents to go and watch, but it's hard for parents to be there with their kids when you have to sit on the ground. pretty much. So if we can add something in there, that would be wonderful. Thanks.
I would say even skate park, like I see a lot of parents around the skate park and there's no place for them to sit, or there's one table there, I think, picnic table, is there?
We have two picnic tables there, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, you know, always have had issues with trying to get that place, have grass around it, and, you know, is there something else that could be done so the aesthetics are a little bit better? But I've noticed, like at skate park competitions, you know, there's, people are standing or sitting on the ground and
Yep. We do have two picnic tables planned for the
Okay.
new outdoor rink, and Diamond 7, as well as another bench putting in there. We just were waiting on bases. We couldn't get the bases done this year, so
Okay.
those are planned to go in here still this fall.
okay.
Mayor Barkley. Can you refresh my memory, over the last while, when the new rink went in, was there a master plan for some paths and some additional trees for that area? And did we at one point have a discussion about being able to perhaps reach out to the community for some donations? Because I actually had this conversation with a few people on Gasoline Alley, just as you're leaving, heading south. There's that wonderful memorial forest in there with the lake and the bridges and stuff like that. Is that something that we could potentially look into? Because we do.
We do, yeah.
Can you still buy?
You can, but we do have a memorial forest up by the cemetery. It's on the west side. Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
So,
Okay.
so Heartland Funeral used to do that. When somebody passed away, you could donate a memorial tree. Curtis quit that when he still owned Heartland, just because the trees didn't always live, and then you've got people upset because the trees don't live, and I think it's just soil conditions and aren't the best, and,
Yeah.
but it's a beautiful spot, absolutely gorgeous. I've
have to check
also
it out.
shared with CEO Becker that a little while ago, there's a program, federal program for tree planting, that you can plant. I think it was, one level was 10,000 trees, and I didn't know whether Innisfail could accommodate that much in tree planting in a year, but
We are looking at a number of different tree grant options. We didn't have it ready for you, but we were hoping to try and have our 5-year tree planting plan for you, but we're just kind of finalizing that, so we have identified a number of areas. Trees around the outdoor rink, that type of stuff, I think will be identified in that, as well as a plan moving forward on some major areas to be able to apply for grants on big programs like that, because, yeah, it does get significantly larger, so.
So with council's dialogue and putting back to the director to reevaluate, you know, what is the budget request based on what he's hearing of maybe enhanced work plan, and let the director come back to you. I can go this far, but what I'm hearing is you want to beef this up, and I need this to be able to do that. So if you're open to the reevaluation, that'd be good.
Are we okay with this? Are we good to move on now? Okay, so we'll move on to public transportation. So the revenue, we are looking at about $15,000 in revenue for the Pace Bus, as well as $42,000 from the MSI operating to kind of help offset. Repairs and maintenance, we did lower down to $4,000, just as these are brand-new machines for right now. There shouldn't be a whole lot of maintenance needed on these things, knock on wood, obviously. Contracted services, we are seeing an expectation of $155,000. That is based on the current operational needs. In that is $130,000 for the annual contract and $25,000 specifically for the chartered services. We did have to add in vehicle fuel, so that is $20,000 this year for vehicle fuel, as well as a $10,000 transfer to the fleet reserve.
may I ask Director Jenkins, how is the program working?
All in all, I think it's positive. There's definitely been some bumps and there's growing pains and, sort of changes as people get accustomed to the new system, both the users and the drivers. but usage continues to increase. And we are seeing increased use of the app and the credit card payment, those types of things that we see in the stats. So I think in terms of an overall community service, we're servicing more people and we're doing more rides. Certainly it has not been without some individual challenges for some individuals. But we've continued to work with both the app developer and with Prairie on an ongoing basis, and they've been good in terms of responding to issues when they are brought forward, so.
Do you see like one or two things that are the big challenges that you hear back from community? Or?
One of the big challenges with the way the app calculates load and unload times, so that's been one challenge in terms of the app and the algorithm learns as it goes. And so they started with a sort of a 5-minute load unload time, particularly if it's someone with mobility issues. And when someone books, if they don't indicate that, if the time doesn't get allocated correctly in the program, and then all of a sudden the timing gets bumped off all the way along the route. Same thing just with the driver. The driver's relying, they have to go off the iPad. They can't outthink the system. And they have to, I arrived, I click it, they're in, I click it, and now it tells me where to go to the next one, so that the timing and the booking works between the systems, as opposed to essentially it was them on their cell phone, and they would wait until the person was done whatever they were doing before they would take another ride and go that way. So yeah, I think it's coming along, and it'll continue to improve. So the contract does come up again in April, so we'll be able to evaluate at that point. We're budgeting right now essentially the same service level in terms of hours of service during the day. We are getting weekend usage on both Saturday and Sunday. Probably looking forward a year or two, maybe extending out the day. I know that sometimes people get kind of caught with that 4 o'clock shutdown, that their appointment was at 3, and then all of a sudden there's not enough time to get back to where they want to be. But that involves, now you're gonna have to have 2 driver shifts, right? Once you go beyond that window, so, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley, through to Director Jenkins. When the dispatch takes a call, do they actually, like I know when you call 911, you get fire. There's a few questions that are asked to alert what's going to go to respond. Does that happen with the PACE bus? Like, do they ask, do you have mobility issues? Does the driver, is the address correct? That kind of thing. So I think some of it goes back to, and I've talked to a number of the patrons, is, well, the driver knows where I live. Well, no, the driver doesn't. The dispatcher doesn't. She doesn't know where to send this bill.
Yeah.
So I think it could be just as easy as a bit of a reminder, a checklist for the dispatchers, and even for the driver to, when he picks someone up, here's sort of what we're looking for, just to help everybody at the dispatch center. So I leave that with you in your renegotiations in April. But positively, I've heard a few complaints. The complaints are coming from the same individuals. And if you know the individuals, it doesn't matter what you're going to do, it's never going to be good enough. So you got to sort of take that into consideration. But yeah, thanks.
So as this is the first real year that'll be full-time, this system, so we're budgeting 189 total. How much is that up from before? Because it doesn't really say.
So the handicap van contribution last year, or we had budgeted, was 96,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And as we look at when I was formulating my questions, the picture changed. So this is the older unit up here now.
Yes.
And it did have a significant repair. And how old is it? No, it's not new anymore, is it?
No, it's not super old though. I think it was I want to say it's a 2018 or something like that. Yeah.
And we
Okay.
didn't, it was all under warranty, the repair work that
Oh, it was just hard to get the parts.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any more on that, or we'll move on? Okay, we'll move on to storm. So base rate is unchanging. The revenue is at just over 131,000. There will be no operating project this year, as we only do that every other year. So the infrastructure repairs and maintenance, so that is anytime we have any digs or repairs, any flushing, if we have to camera the lines, it covers that. And that transfer to reserve is increased to 60,410 this year, just because we don't have that operating project to offset, so we'll put it into reserves. Any comment on that? Okay. We'll move on to water. Okay, so revenue, we are looking at a 15-cent increase for the water rate. The consumption is going up to $2,288,859. That is based on the 5-year average of consumption that we see on our utility bills. The base rate for water is remaining unchanged at $10 this year, or what we're requesting is to remain unchanged. We do have some other fees that are unchanged as well, like the water connection fees, any penalties, and other revenue. We don't anticipate any change to those. So the Mountain View Regional Water Commission, so this is the water that we buy from them, it is increasing to $1,813,908. That is an 8-cent increase from the commission that we're receiving. And we do base that again on a 5-year average. So they do have a couple operating projects, two, so Reservoir 1 renovation for $50,000 and a valve repair replacement program at $50,000 as well. Contracted services at $33,600. It is unchanged for this year, and that covers SCADA, first calls, any instrument tests. This has a summer student that is shared with wastewater, so it's a 50-50 item. And that transfer to reserve, so $25,000 goes to the utility fleet capital reserve, and $149,018 is going to the utility capital reserve.
Can you tell us, Director Kennedy, the renovation on Reservoir 1, what that means?
Yeah, this is actually be the second phase of that. So what we're doing is opening up one side of the old reservoir that we've stopped using because of the regional line. And we're gonna have that available to start for storage, cold storage within there. So try to utilize this infrastructure we have instead of just taking it down, because right now it's just a big concrete tank that we can't utilize, so.
Any questions on that, or we want to talk about rates after we're done, both things? Okay.
I have one more question. So where's that reservoir? Where's it located?
Right by Cal Tire there.
Okay, and so if we're renovating it for storage, is the appropriate place to charge that to the water?
Well, yeah, it's a renovation to our existing water infrastructure, so,
So we're renovating it for storage of water?
well, I guess it was either that or the other option is to decommission it. So the cost of decommissioning would still be here.
No,
So
no, I
we're
just want to
looking at
understand, I'm not trying to understand, so we're gonna have it as a third reservoir again?
No, it's just store equipment. So it'll be, I see where you're going with, yeah, like it's gonna be utilized for all the departments. So it'll be utilized for storage of our water parts and stuff, but it'll also be used for storage of our parks equipment, some of our, so. Yeah, we would have had to
That's
gone
my
to a
question.
different department to do it either way, but, yeah.
Well, I just, being devil's advocate, we're paying for that partially with an increase in the cost of water. And I'm fully in agreement that we always keep our utilities breaking even. Just the flag.
Do we want to keep talking about that now, or do you want to move on?
So flush it out. That's,
Yeah, if we move on, we may forget about coming
Yeah.
back to it, right? So,
Now that it's been explained, I would say we talk about it now, and it's a $50,000 reno, and put it wherever you want to put it. But as we talk about user pay for water and keeping things clean, I would concur with Councillor Bates that we need, maybe take a look at that and put it where it should fit, under infrastructure somewhere, so.
it is a water building, it's a water facility, and if, even,
it-
we would
but
have
it
to.
won't be, though.
But we would
That's-
have to transition it regardless, either we decommission it, that the cost would be here, or we transition it into cold storage.
I'm not disputing any of that. It's where you put the $50,000 on the budget line. I think that's where we're going, Councilor Bates, is that,
Yeah, I'm questioning it. It doesn't seem
yeah. Does it-
it doesn't seem 100% appropriate. Maybe it's 25% appropriate. I don't know.
Where would you like it allocated to?
If we move it out of the water budget, we will have to find tax dollars to pay for it. So just,
That's the whole principle, is should we be paying for it with the cost of water?
But it was a water asset.
yeah.
I mean, we're changing.
It's a water asset, and even if we choose to not use it as a water asset anymore, the water department should pay for that asset to be repurposed into something else. Either it's being decommissioned and we're gonna demolish it, or we're gonna repurpose it into some other type of storage.
And then going forward, it may be allocated someplace else in years going forward,
Yes.
because it's no longer a water asset.
Once it gets to the point where it's no longer a water asset, we would likely maybe rename
Yeah,
it
it's-
and call it something else.
I could argue the other way, though, that if you're going to create a storage facility, then all of the things that are stored is what should pay for the creation of the storage facility,
But I think it
whether
will
it
going
be on that
forward.
site or somewhere else. So it's semantics to a certain degree, but
But it will going forward.
I waved
though,
the flag.
right?
After this, yeah. Yeah, after this renovation is completed.
Yeah, but then it's done.
Right now, if you weren't gonna use it for bikes, trikes, and that kind of thing, then you still gotta repurpose it, $50,000. So what you're saying is that should be charged to the water group because it's their facility.
Yeah.
What we're saying now is, we'll repurpose it, however, going forward, 25 or 40% will be charged to wherever. Is that, we just don't wanna lose sight of it in next year's budget.
I think what they're saying is because it's being repurposed out of the water department, that will get charged now, and then going forward in years ahead, it will be charged to a different department, any
It'll
repairs.
just be our facility
Yeah.
department now at that point.
Yeah.
After it comes away from.
It won't
its-
be underwater anymore,
Yeah,
correct?
correct, yeah.
I'm okay with that.
So then my counter to that would be, would be then next year, whatever the base is for water, we should subtract 50 before we do the budget. Because you're not doing that again. And what tends to happen is you build an increase, it never goes down. And we're letting the consumption of water pay for this, and it won't be used for water again. I'm just being the devil's advocate on that. It's, yeah.
I think one thing to keep in mind is that any excess goes to utility capital reserve. It's not like it's when we show you the the asset management side, keeping in mind that we're not putting out money to the capital reserve. So, yeah, it's a utility increase for certain projects, but certain projects will happen every year. It might not be a reservoir. Maybe next year it'll be Res 2 needs an operating project of $50,000 or $1 million. We don't know. But that's where I think it's important to keep the utility rates, keeping that in mind as well. Is it's not that we're increasing a utility rates for a specific project. These are projects that are going to happen no matter what we do with the rates. Like, we could keep the rate flat. It just means that you're going to pull it from somewhere else as an idea.
So with the asset management work that you've done, Director Kennedy, you know, I know we saw, like we talked about, do we want to stay B+, C-, whatever? So with what we're doing in this budget, are we maintaining, or are we still kind of underfunding where those assets are graded today?
Yeah, our goal it is maintaining. That's our target right now, is maintaining.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that good for now? Okay. We'll move on to wastewater. So the consumption for wastewater is going up. It is a 20-cent increase that we're asking for. It goes up to $2,624,822. That's last year's number, sorry. And we are looking to do a flat rate increase of $2, up from $10 to $12. And that actually increases our base rate revenue from $444,000 to $533,000. This year, we are still transferring from reserves to help pay the balance of this department in the amount of $22,095. However, in future years, you can see that in '25, if we maintain a 20-cent increase and keep the $12 amount flat rate, we're actually being able to put in $10,588. And then in '26, '27, and '28, we're seeing those significant increases that we need to get to. That's not necessarily enough yet, but we are getting to a point where we're putting enough into reserves that we can still pull out and pay for these capital projects that are happening.
So I'm curious what kind of, I realize things always have to be replaced, but are there, I guess outside of MSI, are there grants that, you know, that might be available for things like water, wastewater, infrastructure?
So we have our standard MSI, or
Yeah.
the soon-to-be LGFF, and we have our CCBF, formerly Federal Gas. There's the odd grant that
Okay.
pops up that are very specific, like through COVID, we had a couple, but there are not ones that come in year after year for that kind of projects.
So like no water for life kind of stuff. I don't know what that all entails,
I
but
don't know, yeah, I'm not sure.
A lot of those ones too are regional based, and they're based on treatment. That gets us limited as well, because we are just a distributor of water now. It does limit us on the grants with sewer and water. Makes it a little tougher. One of the things I just thought I'd highlight in regards to the utility capital, fleet capital reserve, the reason that number's so high and we still end up pulling from capital is for the replacement of the hydrovac and flushing truck units. In order for, like, what we did is we went into our 10-year capital fleet and looked at the money, based on the money we're putting into that reserve, we were actually not gonna be able to afford to buy another unit when it was coming due, which we actually have a hydrovac coming due here right away. So we did have to increase that in order to be in that replacement.
so the conversation for further on when we get into vehicles, because I saw, you know, purchase of 5 vehicles. You know, do you do a comparison between leasing and purchasing? I mean, we're not a household where somebody's going to stop driving it whenever. You know, we're always going to need vehicles. They mileage out at some point in time. And would it be better from a municipality's perspective to lease? I know we went like that aspect with some of our parks equipment, as opposed to pulling out so much capital at one time to invest in a
Right.
asset that, depreciating asset?
I haven't put a lot of detail into leasing as an option. What we did try to do this year is put a strategy together to get our fleet into a 15-year cycle, which then puts us away from the leasing option. It's just really trying to catch our fleet up, because our fleet, based on, as you had seen in the capital there, we do have a number of units that are becoming really high maintenance. So it is a catch-up year for us, unfortunately, but we'll be able to show you with that 10-year chart now, we're actually gonna get to a point where we're only doing 1-2 units, because we are gonna catch up again, so.
Would it make sense to delve into leasing and see what that looks like, or is that not something a municipality would typically do?
I haven't, I chatted with a couple municipalities, and they don't, but I
Okay.
didn't do my own research, so I don't know if it's feasible or not.
Okay. So the SRD commission is increasing as well. We were given a 5-cent increase for 2024, and we do base that on the 5-year average as well. The operating projects is sitting at $30,000. This is just a manhole repair replacement project that does happen every year. Engineering services is sitting at $40,000 under this budget. Summer student is shared with water as well, so they are seeing half of that. Contracted services, they're seeing 50% of the SCADA, first calls, instrument tests as well as coveralls comes under here. And then as the transfer to the utility fleet capital is $73,000. And then again, we are pulling from reserves to help balance out this department this year at $22,095.
Just a correction or clarification on the engineering services actually got increased to 65. That was the additional monitoring that we're doing at the old landfill, as well as
That's
at
right.
Dodds Lake there. So it was actually increased this year.
So we'll move on to solid waste, and then we'll talk about utility rates as kind of a whole. So not much has changed through garbage this year. Kind of the only big thing is transfer to general cap reserve to help pay back for the purchase of the bins, either the garbage, recycle, organics bins. It is supposed to be a $34,000 annual repayment. We're only sitting at $29,000, but that's okay. The E360 contract is up in 2024, so we will be looking to take that out to tender, so that could change the way it looks. We're not quite sure. But we are not asking for any rates to change for garbage this year. Any question on garbage? No questions?
Just thinking.
Okay. So these are our proposed utility rates that we are asking for. So water is going up to $3.01, an increase of 15 cents. The water flat rate can remain the same. Sewer water rate, or the sewer rate, is $4 per cubic meter. That's an increase of 20 cents. Sewer flat, we are asking to go up to $12. That's an increase of $2. Then the rest of the flat charges would remain the same. Based with these rates, this is where we're sitting. So these are those proposed rates against all of the rates. Those are current rates for those other municipalities. So we are still kind of sitting right where we expect to be, even with those increased rates in the kind of local community here.
So in keeping with communication, as Councillor Harrison has said before, that flat going up the $2 is a good explanation for that. The trying to catch up to the fact that we keep eroding that reserve.
Yes.
So just putting it out there that that's what we probably should use as the explanation for that one.
Absolutely. We'll be working with our communications department after the budget is passed on, you know, advertising all the changes in the budget, specifically with the utility rates as well.
Would it be helpful to put this in real context, like your cubes and your, like a basic household of 4? They just, what does that look like?
I think so, CEO Becker, because I don't think most people understand what a cubic meter of water is. Like, it's 220 gallons. So when you know, this sounds like a lot, but when you're looking at whatever the overall is, $6 and something for a cube coming in and a cube going out, like, you couldn't even put that into a 750 milliliter bottle and price it probably, like it would be 0.0000 whatever. So I think there needs to be more education around that.
Yeah, like I think a cubic meter is like 10 bathtubs full of water or something like
220
that.
gallons, right? Like that's, well, of course, maybe in liters nowadays, I guess. I'm old, but yeah, so it's a lot of water and, you know, maybe teaching people how they can conserve through low flow shower heads, all that kind of stuff.
Low flow toilets.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Under your water tab, we did do a kind of consumer monthly changes for 2024 as kind of a total. So we see the utility bill from 23 to 24 with our increases, and that's where you see that 515 change. But then we also have the tax increase as well on an average property of 322,000. They are seeing an $11 a month increase. So kind of that total increase for a monthly consumer based on the changes that are proposed here today is $16.52 a month.
That's based on 10 cubes.
Based on 10 cubes.
Yeah, and I think back to the CAO's
Water.
comment,
Water.
anything you can do to wrap that, because somebody will simply look at the flat rate as going up 20% on sewer. You know, that's 12 instead of 10, so that's up 20%. And so, yeah, you need to wrap the whole thing.
Okay.
And I think specifically reinforce that we've been drawing out of that reserve because, yeah.
Well, when we go over the capital next, tomorrow, like we are pulling $1 million out of that reserve to do a capital project, so we do need to make sure we're replenishing that. We don't want to be saving money forever just to save money, but we want to make sure that we're maintaining enough money to do our capital projects over the next 10 years, right? So. Any more discussion on that? Can we move on, or? We'll move on. We can talk about this again, you know, Thursday morning and whatnot, so. Okay, so FCSS. So the big thing under FCSS this year is the grant funds is increasing. It went up from 207,592 up to 216,934. We are just taking basically that entire increase and increasing the grants to others from 120 to 129,000. Yeah, 4.5% increase into the grant revenue that we received, and that's just directly from the government, right? That they just increased.
So the Alberta government has increased 4%.
Yeah, it's about $9,000.
Okay, so we were having this discussion
Yeah.
yesterday with Manager McKenzie. So this should be an 80-20 program. We're at 60-40. So I want to know what it looks like at 80-20 and where would we look at, I mean,
So right now, we're at 58.42, actually, is
Well,
where we
okay.
sit.
So can you bring it back sometime at 80-20 and who's not going to get funding?
Without cutting staff, you'd have to eliminate that grants to others line, essentially.
The whole line?
Yeah, which right now, the grand majority of that, so 92,000 goes to school programs.
Okay.
Between Chinook's Edge and Red Deer Catholic, both the family school wellness and the YES programs. And then last year we did 3,000 to Henday Association, 3,000 to Victim Services, and 2,000 went to the Senior Center.
So I guess my question would be,
that.
Director Jenkins, and like I said, I don't want to be the cold-hearted person
Yeah.
here, but, you know, I mean, I guess from a philosophy standpoint, like, we're picking all this up because we're not getting the revenue we should be getting in so many ways from elsewhere. So if you cut that programming in half, the grants to others, or, I mean, it puts a pressure on them, but, you know, maybe they need to advocate to other levels of government to get that funding back or to increase. I mean, you take a look from 2015 to 2024, you know, there's a 5% increase and now a 4% increase in all those years.
And I guess that's a determination for council. I think at this point, it's the community that's gonna suffer if we say, well, we're gonna stick to 80-20.
Well, it is,
That,
yeah, I know.
That those programs won't, you know, be funded, whether or not we have a loud enough voice in that.
Yeah.
I
Or-
guess that's.
or maybe it's
that's
something
up to
to-
council's determination as to how that would go, but it's, cause essentially the only primary expenses is grants to others or salaries, those are the expenses
Yeah.
in the budget.
Director Jenkins, has there been discussion with like there's that group, the larger group, with all the different organizations in town that Karen?
Like interagency?
Yeah, the interagency group, having that discussion around the 60/40, 80/20. And I use the example of Chinook's Edge School Division. There's a large grant goes to that to feed the gremlins breakfast, right? And,
The children, the students.
okay, it's been a long day, more oxygen. But no, has there been that discussion around advocacy about, because they're gonna suffer, like if we have to cut, well, we're sorry, we won't be able to.
I would think the vast majority of the interagency participants are all government funded in a large capacity, so they're all either feeling the same pinch or are all essentially advocating for pieces of their own.
Yeah, but if they lose their grant from the town, from FCSS, they're not gonna have a program. So I guess that's what I'm getting at is, you know, maybe step it up a notch. I don't know.
If I may. I think the schools are the mechanism to fund like family wellness and the gremlin breakfast. Those are the mechanisms to feed those people of need. It's not so much it's a school-related program, but it's really a community-based program from my experience. And I guess the expectation of council would be, or you're expecting that the government funds 80% of our social programming needs of the community? That's really the question. Do we expect more government funding to support socially in our community?
Yes.
Then that's within your privy then to demand that. Right now, there's been the scale has moved a bit over the course of time. Likely it was 80-20 at some point. It's filtered based on the needs of the community and the council's desire to offset those social needs.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting, like, it seems to be a will here to want to advocate at AM or whatever, are you suggesting that as a medium, or how do you do that?
Well, that was at AM last year. They had, can't remember the counselor's name, but they had a panel.
Yeah, from Westlock.
Yeah, Westlock,
Yeah.
yes.
But
Yeah.
I think from what I see it is, council you can set that tone, we want to go, start moving back to that 80-20. But there's going to be holes in your social infrastructure.
Yeah, and I don't mean, well, let's slash it this year and we're done with this, but I think the awareness is really important, and, you know, I think as, you know, the committee awareness, as an example, they need to understand exactly what this means to us And yes, we need to advocate to provincial government, and we need to inform and educate them.
So the challenge, I guess, is how come we, and again, I'm not trying to take a government side to this, but what is the why? Why do we expect additional government dollars to fund our social needs? Is that their responsibility? Is it?
A bunch of it is, yeah.
Can you help me out there? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, just help me.
yeah.
Well, I'm asking of council, what is it what is missing, I guess, to help in that, if you move into lobby, what is missing? Like, what is that void? Like, why shouldn't it be the town to fund the social infrastructure of our community to a certain extent?
Well, I thought that's why FCSS, how that was set up, was 80-20.
Yeah, but I guess, but why should it be 60-40?
Well, because the provincial government had a $12 billion surplus, and we're scraping the barrel, trying to get through our budget this year, as per usual, because, I mean, we've seen so much funding in so many areas decline. We've seen social needs increase and demand on those programs, and we used to have one person, now we have two, because we need human resources to meet the demands in the community. We keep hearing from everybody that there's more social issues going on in Innisfail than ever before, and every other community says the same thing. So we can't just keep bearing this ourselves, or our taxpayers bearing the cost of all this.
So,
I'm going to keep going.
Excuse me, Mayor Barkley,
I'll help you.
wasn't it at Spring Caucus as well where Notley and Premier Smith acknowledged and said, Notley said, if we get in, we're going to definitely increase it. And Daniel Smith said, well, when it comes time, we will look. And they did do a bit, but they acknowledged that there is a huge gap in funding for it. I know, yeah. Yeah.
The current government, I think, thought they were responding when they threw all that food bank money into the FCSS pot, when in fact, that doesn't meet the mandate of FCSS at all. I think our response to the community, though, is reflected in the fact that we now have a 60-40 split rather than an 80-20 split. So we are, sorry, rolls off the tongue. I wonder, though, myself, I don't know why we continue. I think I'd like to see us package this differently. So I'm not saying that I'd like the town to take the $103,000 or $104,000, whatever that difference is, to put it back to the 80-20. I don't like to see us remove that, but I'd like to perhaps consider repackaging it so that we're not presenting that as an investment from the provincial government through FCSS, but that in fact is the town's contribution to the social fabric of the community. And so let's, talk more accurately at that 80-20 and then own the difference between the 20 and the 40 as being our contribution to our community.
And I would also like to see us do a lot of education about the decline that has happened. I thought Alberta Munis did a great paper on the emergent resolution and the 420 per capita. We're now at 150 or less than 150. I mean, we're looking at, I don't even know, we don't even know what we're getting this year. We assume maybe 1.2, but we don't know that for sure. And so you think of $420 per capita. What would that mean for Innisfail right now? Like $3.2 million, and we're getting 847,000 this past year. So it is a huge gap, huge. And then we have this, and then we have RCMP, that's federal. And, there's so many things that other levels of government are not keeping up with, but we can throw, see now I'm on the soapbox, we can throw $300 and however million at an event center in Calgary, and $39 million for 50% of the cost of a community arena, but mid-sized towns are not getting, and that's what frustrates me. And I think more education around that so our residents understand that what we're missing and how much things have declined the last several years and what?
Prompting you.
Did you,
Yeah, I did have a question though. For real. Let's just say if we did do something drastic, like remove some of the money from the grants to others, then what are the options for the programs then?
I don't know what the programs are, like
So, again, the primary ones would be the YES program and the family school wellness, so it would be hours of individuals in the schools. So each of the schools has FTEs for family school wellness, for which we fund a portion of those. So it would likely be the capacity within the schools as to whether those individuals maintain, and then the YES program would be the same thing as to how many hours and what the capacity of that program is.
So the only option is cutting.
Well, it would either, because if you look at that expense line, essentially grants to others is 129,000, and then you look at salaries as 160, 180 by the time you have everything in there. So if you were gonna try to recover that difference, you would be looking at one of those two lines essentially.
even if we cut one staff member, it wouldn't.
Yeah, because this is only essentially 1 3/4 FTE
Yeah.
reflected in that department.
But when we think about their options, for instance, we're talking about, talking to FCSS about informing and advocating to government. Do they have a platform to do that? Or is that through the municipality that they do that? FCSS.
Like the board itself?
There's a
Yeah.
provincial association
Yeah.
for FCSS.
Okay.
But I think it's quite obvious that, like, it's not just us feeling it, right? When you have the report that's done by RMA,
Yeah.
that's not us either. So I'm even wondering, is there a conversation that's, can take place with Chinook's Edge, Catholic School Board, like, so they understand kind of where we're at, like, for administration to administration, and, you know, some of the pressures that we're feeling, and no, I don't want to cut things, I'm just trying to make a point that this isn't right, and
So I think another thing has to be recognized from a stint that I did on FCSS a few years back, that we gravitated to these means of delivering from, and dropped some others.
Yes.
Boys and Girls Club and a few of the other things that it was felt was more efficiently delivered the way it is today. So all I'm saying is, before anybody looks at those changes, you need to look back in history and see what else, how it got there.
So are we comfortable for this year?
And don't get me wrong, council, I'm not saying do that, this or whatever, but it's, I just want to make it, you know, get your point, your perspective, what's missing in our social planning of our community. Is it, you know, what's our role? What's the expectation of government? Because that really is a conversation. What is our expectation of all our other stakeholders, like the school divisions with, you know, funding and their programming, and the government to help fund some of the social needs of our community, because it doesn't end. There's mental health, it just goes on and on and on. But anyways, I do believe personally, professionally, that government should be funding. I want to make that clear, but just poking at you a bit, just what is the why? Why do we expect this of government? Just want to make sure we're clear.
I think there is, you know, again, the FCSS mandate on prevention. So even our 20% has to go towards those prevention. Anything additional, if there is any sort of direct intervention or those types of things that can't be covered under FCSS funding that we're eligible for, there's some of that ability to spend that money a little bit differently.
I believe that there was a resolution passed was there, at Alberta municipalities on FCSS, because they were certainly front and center but I can't remember. Yeah, I thought there was, but, so.
So work to be had. This is an item I think we'll have to come back to you for further direction, how you wish to advance this conversation.
You mean as far as cuts, Mr. Becker, or as far as advocating?
Advocacy.
Yeah, for sure,
but,
yeah.
The budget's the budget.
Yeah, yeah.
What I'm hearing is they'll keep it the way it is, and then start come back to you with further conversations.
Okay, so while that goes on in the background over the next little bit, we're happy with where it is for this next year, though. Just want to make sure before I move on. Okay. What's happening? Do you want to take a break? Okay. Okay, let's take a quick Okay, perfect. We'll get going again and move on to cemetery. So in your book, you can see that we did actually increase some of the revenues for cemeteries. And this was based on the actuals for the last couple of years. So we increased open and close graves. So that's after someone's already purchased a plot and someone needs to use it now. So there is a cost there where we actually have to go and dig it. So we did increase that from 24 to 28,000, as well as plot and columbarium sales. We did increase that up to 45,000, with the anticipation that we did purchase a new columbarium as well that will likely be released. It's on order. It does take a long time to get here, but it will be open sometime next year, and that will generate quite a bit of revenue for us. Part-time wages, the cemetery does cover one summer staff. And the big thing in here is the operating project that's new this year. It is $25,000 to cover new concrete runners. This is a project that goes every other year. So this is the year that we have it. And then like in 25, we won't have it. 26, we will have it, and so on. The transfers to reserve is sitting at $7,500. However, that will be equal to whatever that perpetual care amount is in the revenue. And so if it's 10,000, it'll be 10,000 going to reserves. Any questions on cemetery? Yes.
Yeah, just, sorry,
No, go ahead.
just one, is there room for one more or two more columbariums? Because the last one seemed to have sold out pretty quick.
Yes, we have one on order, and
No.
then we have room for one more spot that is
There's
still
room
empty.
on the pad.
So there's 2 empty spots right now,
Thank you.
and we have one on order, which will be here, I think we ordered it, 4 months ago?
Should be in December.
Yeah, it should be in December sometime. We may not open it right away until the other one is full, but it will be there sitting, waiting to sell. And then eventually, again, we'll have another one, which, depending on how quickly it sells, we could be ordering it in a year or 2 years, so.
Councillor Maceros?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. What actually is perpetual care?
So it is the future care of your plot, right? So that is when if your headstone sinks and we have to go bring a machine and lift it up and fill underneath it and things like that, right? It is for the future maintenance of the cemetery.
So do you just pay that, like if I had a plot, is that a yearly payment or?
No, so that's a payment that you pay when you purchase your plot. So it's just a one-time kind of fee. For example, a full-size plot, I think the perpetual care is anywhere like $400 to $600 for a plot that you pay on top of the regular fees.
Okay, and then is there a cost, so is there a charge for opening and closing the columbariums?
There is. So your first one is included in with the purchase of your columbarium, and any additional open and closes after that, which likely would be, because I think you can put two urns in there for three.
I think.
You can get 3 in there. So the first one is included in the original purchase, but if you were to open it again, then it would be, I think it's $210 or something like that.
And then that is accounted for in the open and closed graves?
That's
Okay,
correct, yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
So last term, Director Vickers, we had a consultant come in and talked about future expansion of the cemetery. How far away are we from that? Because we haven't talked about it really much at all in this term, and
We'd have to do a new inventory update, I guess, to see exactly how far away we are. We are proceeding with the first phase of design for the new columbarium area and entrance sign, but we'd have to actually reevaluate that and see just how far away we are.
It was a long time before
think
we
we had
need the new
15 years.
cemetery. Yeah, 15 years.
I wasn't talking so much the new cemetery,
Oh,
more
okay.
so some of the renovations, shall
Like
we
the
say, that
the infill
he brought
portions?
forward for the existing cemetery.
So we will be looking to do an infill design here over the next couple of years to kind of, to get more out of our own cemetery, right? Yeah. Okay.
How much is in the cemetery reserve in total?
Yeah. I don't know where it is. I can't, I'll have to find it, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay, are we good to move on to municipal planning? Okay. Just get this. Okay. So we do see a decrease in the very first line for permits from 50 down to 40. So this is our plumbing electrical. So this estimate is based on permits issued by the IJD. We are receiving 20% of that revenue, and that's what that dollar amount is. The second line is actually development permits, so we are seeing an increase from 6,000 to 10,000 for that. Compliance certificates is also seeing a nominal increase up to 2,500. Safety code fees is sitting at 3,000, up from 2,500. However, this is a direct in and out on the line. So as soon as we receive that revenue, we are actually paying that back out again. Building permits is staying the same. Off-site levies is also staying the same at $25,000. However, that will go directly into the off-site levy reserve as well. So it's just an in and out on this line item. We are seeing a grant fund of $60,000. That is for our municipal intern. So we originally had the grant broken out over last year and this year, in 23 and 24, sorry. We actually did not receive any revenue in 23. We will be receiving it all in 2024. So contracted services were moved. Contracted services, so Munisite and the Altila subscription have been moved to the admin budget to be with all the other computer programming items. Planning services is down to $25,000 actually, so that is for the PCPS contract and professional support. We are seeing that grants to others at $70,000, so that is the facade program and the infill. And we do have $27,000 for operating projects, so that's $12,000 for an air photo and $15,000 for like downtown tactics, downtown initiatives, things like that. We are seeing the building inspections line as the expense. It's going up from $5,000 to $60,000. That is the cost for our external contractor to do our building permits.
I've got a question. Is the change in the planning services, the decrease in the planning services, is that based on the way that they have restructured their fees?
Yes, so yeah, I'll let Director Jenkins just.
Yeah, that's what we're projecting with moving forward with the new fee schedule. So we've opted for the tier 2 membership. And based on our historical usage over the last few years at that rate, we should be more in that $20,000 range in terms of what our actual expenditure is. With the way it's set up now, it's not a set amount. So, you know, we will get charged for the hours as we go forward, as opposed to right now, it's an upfront contract and we draw down on the bank of hours. So this year will be a bit of an experiment, I guess, in terms of how much we use. We are carrying over a large credit balance though with PCPS, because in the past you've basically purchased hours in advance and we haven't been fully utilizing our allocation. So we do have quite a large carry forward of hours that we may not end up spending that amount because of that, so.
And they continue to honor those even amongst all the okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
If I can, excuse me, ask about from the operating projects, that's a new budget line. I get what the air photo is, but can you tell me more about the 15,000 in downtown initiatives and where those project ideas came from?
So this is things like if we want to paint crosswalks, or if we're looking at banner replacements downtown, the vacant lot that that has now gotten larger. Sort of those public space improvements and different projects that we can look at, sort of doing those enhancements within. So there's not necessarily set projects within that. yeah, within that line.
So we'll move on to subdivision land. So the big thing out of this one is we do have another housing project in here to build more houses. It is part of the capital budget for tomorrow, but it is, the revenue is being associated in here, as well as the transfer to the capital budget to help offset that. Now, we will be treating them the same as the previous houses that we did, where we will build them. The land acquisition reserve will fund it until we have received the revenue from the sales, and then we'll reimburse that reserve. Hopefully, it may happen in the same year, and then we don't need to touch the reserve, but if it does bridge into '25, we will have to have that kind of bridging from the reserve to help that. So we do see the land revenue, land sales at $2,475,000. So that is a portion of the Southwest industrial land sales that we know for sure are being sold in there, as well as we anticipate another one being sold, just as a guess, as well as the land sales from the anticipated homes that we are going to sell as well. So if we do not want to do the capital project tomorrow and you guys decide that that's going to be a no, we would have to come back into this budget and just recalculate those numbers just to make sure they're good. Engineering services has stayed the same at 10,000. That'll pay for, like, if we need a surveyor or things like that. Contracted services went up from 20 to 25,000. So this is any legal costs, realtor's costs, any advertising if we want to do out of there. The land lease at 4,500. That is for that the old vacant lot down on Main Street there.
Can I follow up with a question
Sure.
about that? The lot that has just been cleaned up or partially cleaned up, has there been any discussion with the landowner of the long-term future of that lot? Or, okay, I'm going to remove the camera.
Okay. I know, I wish we had a light that we just flip a switch. Red light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Added in, okay, done, no, just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so just back on that, like, this is the projected revenue for each of the lots in the Southwest Industrial. And we do have the loan now that's included in this budget. So we took out the loan for the principal of $5.5 million to do the development of the Southwest Industrial lands. The interest is 1.7 for a total payment of $7,267,843. We do have currently a projected revenue of just under 8 million at 7.988 million, which does leave us with a net revenue of 720,000. That's if we maintain a full 10-year payback of the Southwest Industrial lands. I hope that we won't have to. I hope that once the land is marketable, because now the roads are going to be completed here very shortly and we'll be able to market it fully for purchase. I'm hoping that it may only take 1 to 2 years for us to sell out, and then we won't have to pay a lot of that interest costs.
Is the idea to sell it ourselves?
I don't know.
At this point, we continue. We may end up having to look at commercial real estate. It's gonna cut into your margin, but yeah.
Has it been fairly brisk? Like, have you still getting inquiries or, I know we
yeah.
haven't marketed hardly
Yeah,
like,
it's
at all,
been
so, yeah.
pretty quiet at this point. Yeah.
Even if it does cost us a little bit more to pay for a commercial or an industrial realtor, if we can save any amount of that $1.7 million in interest, if we can sell it in 3 years versus 10, I mean, we'll be saving a ton of money, right? So sometimes it would be good even if it costs us $25,000 to pay for that. At the end of the day, I think if they can guarantee some sales, it would be much more beneficial. Yes.
They have a long reach, right? And they have clients and connections and, yeah.
Okay, is there any more talking on that, or we can move on? Okay, so we're at the campground now. Not a whole lot changed. The rental income went up from 17 to 19,000. So Director Kennedy and I actually had a meeting with a member of the Lions Club just last week or the week before, and talked to them about the increased rising costs of the natural gas and electricity. And we actually only asked for a $1,500 increase. They wanted a round number, so they offered 19,000, which we accepted, and that is incorporated into this budget. As you can see that the electricity costs increased by $2,000 for this year, so we're not realizing any more revenue, but at least it's not impacting any of the taxpayers on that, so. So at the campground, they do have 42 trailer sites, 27 with 15 amp electricity and 15 with 30 amp. They actually just did a whole bunch more of 30 amp here recently, and they still have 5 tenting sites with no power. Any questions on that? Okay.
Just one little point. So when we talked to the Lions Club, did we know the electricity? So we
Yeah,
just,
so we brought forward the history, the last
Yep.
3 years' history to them and showed them.
so we just agreed that everything is
Yep.
good? Yep.
Yep.
I want to make sure they knew
Oh, yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that they don't think we're getting an increase.
No, they knew the
Thank
cost.
you.
We showed them all the costs when we had our meeting, so. Okay, so we'll move into economic development. So the big thing in this is we do have a new EDO staff position, primarily in this budget. They're not 100% in here, but they are primarily in this budget. The CAPE and EDA fees are sitting in there. Contracted services is sitting at $50,000. And that grants to others to support economic development. So that's kind of a new initiative for $15,000, just to give us the opportunity when a business or like the chamber comes in and asks for support, we have kind of a pot of money where we can support those businesses. there any questions on that? We're good? Okay. Okay. So we kind of renamed the tourism department. It's now called communications. Just it really is more for communications anyway. So in this, they do have some contracted services. So this is where our smartphone app is kind of housed out of, as well as any website costing is based out of here. Special events is sitting at $45,000. That is unchanged from last year, and it does pay for things like the parade, registration nights. We do have 2 of those per year. Youth and Seniors Week, Hillside Vibes, our skateboard community event, Christmas tree lighting, our Canada Day, Community Awards, Family Day, and Winterfest. Membership fees, yeah, that's our CATA and Red Deer Tourism is out of there. Yeah.
So we're not part of that anymore, or it's just not in?
For CATA?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
you said it's in here?
yeah,
Oh, I
it's
thought you said-
under membership
Okay,
fees.
sorry, I thought you said it was out. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
No, under membership fees at $6,000, so that pays for CATA and Red Deer Tourism, so it pays for those 2.
So question I have, are we getting benefits out of that?
So we have been more involved with CATA than we had been in the past. Manager Shaw's been attending meetings, and communications has been working with them, largely Red Deer Tourism that sort of runs it, trying to ensure that we do get the coverage and the exposure through that, through their social media and through their channels, so,
And are we?
yeah.
Are we?
I believe so. We've certainly seen more and had more, I guess, interaction from them than in the past, but.
Yeah, I think it's improving and increasing our involvement. I think if you approve the EDO, I think there's room for even more involvement, and there's a few initiatives that we
Yeah.
fully participate in.
Okay.
I think it's similar to some of the other regional things.
Yep.
You get what you put
Yep.
in a lot of the cases, so.
Maybe if it suits, I wouldn't mind sometime maybe having presentation on it. Like, does that make sense? And
Are you okay to move on, or do you still want to talk about that?
I guess I'm curious, like, maybe this isn't the place to have it, but just kind of how it works, like organizations in town, like Discovery Wildlife Park and the golf course, and like, does that kind of all come under that umbrella, like through the town of Innisfail, or
No, their members,
both are directed?
I'm not sure about the golf course, but I
Okay.
know Discovery Wildlife Park is a member
Yeah.
on their own as a destination.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a question on the last one, if that's okay. So that's on the economic development. So the salary, that's for the EDO? Did we hire an EDO last year? Or
Nope.
like this year?
Nope.
No, 2024.
Sorry?
No, we're hiring just for 2024, a new EDO in 2024.
And then what was the salary amount for 2023?
So the salary amount was 110,000, so that could be, we just reallocated salaries around just to make the department so it wasn't such a huge increase in one department versus the other.
So who would be in that number?
Yeah, I can have a look, just 1 second. So in economic development for 2024. Oh, 23, okay, hold on 1 second. So this year, so last year we had 5% of the director of community services and 25% of the manager of planning. And in this year, it's 75% of the economic development officer. There is still a portion of there, but I think last year there was a higher percentage.
Okay, I see what you're
in there. We
saying.
reallocated
they
that
get
for this year, we
split
lowered
across.
them off. But it
Okay.
is still really just those couple of staff members.
So if only 75% of this budget line item goes to the EDO, where does the other 25% come from?
The other 25% went to the land development.
Okay.
Likely they would be involved in the sales of the Southwest Industrial land, possibly the Southwest Residential portion, things like that. So we did attribute a portion of that wage to that department as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to community services programs. So the first line item there under rentals and leases, that is our joint use rentals and leases. So that is primarily things that are at Chinook's Edge, like the schools. So that is up from 4,000 to 10,000. The miscellaneous revenue, so that's our programming revenue. So that's like any yoga or paddleboarding or things like that. That is up from 10,000 to 15,000. Red Deer County contribution is sitting at $15,000. So the joint use expenses, so if you look down the JUC expense line, so that's sitting at 10,000 with the revenue sitting at 10,000. Those are the two that will have to balance out to zero. So if we get a revenue of 12,000 and an expense of 10,000, we are putting 2,000 into reserves. However, if it's the opposite and we only receive 8,000 in revenue and 10,000 in expenses, there's a reserve that we pull out of to balance those out to zero. And that line, the joint JUC expense line, is when the school requires something new, like if they want new basketballs or volleyballs, or I think this year they got a score clock. That's kind of what covers those kind of funds. They make a request and then we can purchase that. Is there any other questions on that?
No, sorry.
Okay, so we'll move on to the admin budget. So at the top, the miscellaneous revenue, $20,000, that is the solar farm elemental energy grant funding that we receive. And then the $23,415 is the MSI operating that goes towards, to offset the historical village contribution. So the part-time wages, it's not that they're not being used this year, we just reallocated those to the facility budget, that is the custodian's cost. So it just made more sense to be in the facility budget versus the community services admin budget. So it is still in the budget, just reallocated. So the big thing here is the 2 grant to others on the bottom of this page. So the first one, which is 5770, that went up from 43,000 to 63,000. That is 30,000 for the historical village, 13,000 for community grants, and we added the additional 20,000 for public art. In the grants to others, the 5771, it went from 20,000 to 25,000. 20,000 of that is for the elemental energy grant out, and 5,000 of that is for internal services that we provide. So in that elemental energy 20,000, 15,000 goes to organizations or businesses for large things. 5,000 is for individuals. And primarily a lot of that $5,000 was being requested for internal programs like pool passes and things like that. So we thought to increase that with an additional $5,000 to offset those internal requests so that we can keep that $5,000 going out to external providers.
And that fee assistance program has been very well utilized, where we've actually gone over the $5,000 budget, sort of in anticipation of this internal funding. You know, it felt a little bit disingenuous to say, well, there's $5,000 for fee assistance and 4,000 of it is going to pool passes and Pace Bus punch cards, when those are sort of things that we can supply, so.
Did you want to talk about any of this stuff? No? Okay. move on to the arena then. So one good thing about this is we're finally starting to see us kind of level out to back to pre-COVID levels for a lot of the revenues when it comes to the arena. So you can see that advertising increased from 20 to 22,000. Admissions has stayed the same. But ice rentals, so that first one, 4560, is for ice rentals. It went up from 202,000 to 215,000. The rentals and lease, the second one is actually for meeting rooms, meeting room rentals. There was no change on that at 7,500. The third one is the dry ice rental, so that's like your lacrosse and things during the summertime. It went from 20,400 up to 30,000. And then the last one is the leases, so that's like the skating club, Innisfil minor hockey, things like that. It went from 20,000 down to 12,000. And then we see the Red Deer County contribution as well. In here we do have the contracted services sitting at 25,000, and in that they pay for security, ice painting, board cleaning. Building repairs and maintenance did get reallocated, so it's not that it's gone, it's just being moved. They do have an operating project of $18,000 for sprinkler maintenance. Yeah, which is essentially just a carryover from last year or from 2023 that hasn't been completed yet. And we do see that transfer to reserve sitting at $100,000.
Sorry, 4565 again, Director Vickers.
4565 is leases, so the skating club lease, Innisfil minor hockey, like the leasing of the rooms, the concession lease in the arena, things like that.
So why the decrease?
I'm gonna have to look at that one. I have the Eagles not included as my note, but I'll have to just go back and double check the amount on that one.
Okay. And then just remind me again and again and again. So do our leasing rates, are they tied to inflation?
We've been using 2% now the
Okay.
last couple of years, so everything has gone up as they've renewed.
Okay. And is there a difference in rates between in-town and out-of-community people, clubs that are leasing?
So we don't really have out-of-town clubs leasing, but our rates, like ice rental rates that's part of our agreement with the county, is
Okay.
that there's no discriminatory sort of
So
charging.
you wouldn't have an external organization to Red Deer wanting to lease ice here for a hockey tournament?
So that would still qualify as a youth sport
Okay.
if it was Red Deer Minor Hockey. If it was someone like Thrive who does rent ice here, that's a commercial business, so
Okay.
that is a different rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
But these leases are more intended like this is the concession lease, this is the
Yeah.
office room lease. If someone, for the ice rentals, I do believe there is definitely a
There's-
different rate for,
There's youth, there's adult,
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
For-profit or sort of
isn't there
commercial.
a non-local?
It's tied in that
Yeah.
commercial, non-local, yeah, but they're, and then for ice time, there is a prime and non-prime time booking. Yeah.
I do have a question. So the rentals, the increase, is that increased usage or increased price that's reflected in that, or,
Primarily increased usage.
okay, and we're actually seeing that because we're into the season? Okay, good. And then, it used to be kind of a standing item, but I noticed, I forgot to mention a couple of weeks ago, the digital sign on the outside's got some bad cells again. And it used to be that it was warranty, and then I think they finally gave us a new sign. So I don't know. Just bringing it up. I don't know if we'll have to do something there. If we do something new, I'd sure like to be better than whatever we did.
Can I ask just a question? So how many people are working in the arena at any given time? Do we have one person in there or two people?
So there's typically two.
Two?
Yeah.
And what time, so what, are there hours during the day when we have staff there, but the arena is not open for programming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, So there's 4 full-time employees that work, shifts that they're sort of 4 on, 4 off. And then there's part-timers that fill in
Okay.
between, and we have the arena supervisor.
Okay, but are there times during the day when there are staff at the arena, but the facility is not available for use? So like in the mornings or whatever? it
It's
might-
not that the facility's not available for use, but it is not.
It's not programmed, though,
It
by-
is not, utilized, but there's noontime skates and shinnies and parent and taught stuff during the days, but yes,
Right.
there is time when there is staff there and there
okay.
is not anyone on the ice.
Okay, thanks.
So Director Jenkins, I know I've asked this before, so I apologize, but, you know, we talk about a new facility, we hear field house, blah, blah, blah. So do you see the possibility of using one arena for hockey? Or is that, and figure skating, of course, or not?
At
Definitely
this
not.
point, not.
Okay,
With
no,
like
fair enough, yep.
the usage is primarily still Innisfil minor hockey,
Yeah.
and then, yes, there's, figure
Skating,
skating.
yeah.
Yeah, we aren't seeing gaps in
Nope.
usage.
Fair enough. Okay,
Yeah. In fact, we get requests to leave the ice in more than what it
Okay.
currently is, and we're still dealing on that, the lacrosse hockey
Right, yeah.
divide.
okay. No, that's good, thanks.
Well, and I would add, going down there frequently, and less frequently now because I don't have as many people to watch, but if you go down there after the first of the year on a weekend, you will see an attraction to this town like you've never seen because there's a tournament every weekend after the first of the year. And yeah, it's huge.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the pool. So again, we are seeing some increased revenue here at the pool as well. I feel like people are more back to that pre-COVID levels of that attending and going to those, doing those kinds of activities. So admissions, we are seeing an increase from 40 to 45,000. Lesson fees, so primarily like school lessons and summer swim lessons, things like that, is going up from 90,000 to 100,000. Season tickets are going up from 25 to 30. Where aqua fitness and vending machine is remaining unchanged. However, rentals and leases is going up from 50,000 to 60,000, and we also see that Red Deer County contribution at that 187,000 as well. We do see a transfer to reserve increase for the aquatic center. So in 2022, there was nothing being transferred to reserves, and for the past history, there wasn't anything. So in 2023 was the first year we put something in at 50,000, and then again we upped it in 24 to 100,000 as well. So there is no operating project scheduled for this year, and all the building repairs and maintenance again got moved, reallocated to the facility budget. Yeah. So we'll take any questions on the pool. None? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to facilities. Okay, so the first one is rentals and leases. These are our cultural facilities, so the Kemp House, Henday Association, things like that. So we are seeing a minor decrease. That's just based on like actuals, just by, $260. So the 4563, so that is the curling club lease, that is remaining the same at $5,000. And 4565, those are LLC rentals, so primarily like the big room and things like that. We are seeing an increase from 15,000 up to 26,000, which is a great thing to see. The miscellaneous revenue, that is the senior center rent at $3,500, and then we have the Red Deer County contribution on there as well. So all expenses for the LLC fall under this line, like utilities and the security portion. You do see that building repairs and maintenance, it went up from 35,000 up to 194,000, so it looks like a big jump. It is actually not an increase, it's just the same amount that was in all the other budgets. We've just combined them all into one line item. That'll just be better and more economical for the facility manager to kind of manage that budget for us. The contracted services line, that was that HIPPO computer program for our facility software that did get reallocated to the admin budget. And we do have that transfer to reserve sitting at $10,000, going to allocated for the curling rink portion.
So tell me about the increase, Director Vickers. Like, is that based on 2023 usage that, or?
Sorry, the increase
like,
for what, sorry?
On the rentals on the LLC, like it's going from 15 to 26, pretty significant, which is, it's great.
Yeah, so there were marginal rate increases sort of across our rates and fees, but we are seeing that LLC booking sort of get back to pre-COVID revenue.
There is a $5,000 operating project in here, and that is for washroom cracks, so we'll go to fix that.
At Centennial Park.
At Centennial
outdoor.
Park.
If I can ask a question, last week we had a delegation from the library doing their presentation regarding their 5-year service plan. And in that conversation, the library manager raised the concern about the fact that the washroom, the handicap washroom in the LLC actually in fact is not accessible because it does not have an electric door opener. So I'm wondering, I don't see it evident in the capital budget or here, and I appreciate that it just sort of came up, but I don't want to lose record of that request and hope that we can have that conversation.
No, the facility manager made note of the comments made when the library was here. Again, the reference was made to the family washroom in the foyer. Both of the gendered washrooms are fully accessible, but we will explore what it would look like to be able to install sort of those push buttons on the family washroom as well. Okay, we'll move on to library. So we do see the Red Deer County contribution of $10,980 to help offset the cost of the library. We do have an operating project of $8,500 in here, and that is for the front grass replacement. I thought I was going to say glass, but the front grass replacement. And there is no, and then the big thing out of here is the grants to others. It is at $227,000. $156,000 is for the Innisfil Library, and $71,000 is the Parkland Regional Library. Now those are rounded numbers because it is, I think, $155,975. They did not ask for an increase this year. However, I would anticipate an increase next year from them. Any questions on that?
Can you just remind me who the salaries line, who that refers to?
I can pull that up 1 second. Oh, crap. I just got rid of it. I accidentally closed the page, hold on. It's probably a portion of yours. Yeah, I'll get it exactly. Just give me a minute. Okay. It's just loading, it's taking forever, I'm sorry. Yeah. My computer's mad at me today, it's like, calm down. It's still thinking.
Mine just froze.
That was the idea, it was to, if we were able to finish operating today, we'll start fresh first thing in the morning with the capital, hopefully spend that day doing capital tomorrow, and then have Thursday if you want to touch base, now that you've had some time to think about it. There must be something wrong. He's loading, I can't load. That likely is as a,
It'll be a portion
It's
of facility maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not part-time wages, which would be
Yeah.
custodial.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I do have another question that flipped back, it just caught me. where do we reflect the income that we're gonna get now from our solar panels? Like, for instance, on the curling rink or,
So the revenue is really just a decrease in the electricity costs,
okay?
so.
And it doesn't have to happen here at budget, but I'd like to, once we know we kind of where we're at, I'd like to get an indication of what that is, just,
And we have just sat down recently on
Yeah.
how we, especially on the curling rink where the curling club pays, like, we invoice them for the utility costs, so how the offset from the solar panels are,
right,
come into the town as opposed to offsetting the curling club's utility bill.
right.
Yeah.
And even the differential, because we added to something on this building, it'd be good to know what we gained.
I
'Cause-
can show you the app on my phone.
oh, no, that, yeah, no, dollars.
So it finally showed up, and yes, it is a portion, there's 5% of the director's wage attributed to the library, and then 10% of the facility manager and the facility maintenance technician wages as well. Okay, is there any questions on the library? Any more questions on the library? Okay, so that's kind of it for the operating budget right now, I guess. Is there anything specific you want to hear again on Thursday? Is there any other information you want me to find? Or, I mean, we can do that Thursday too. If you have questions then, that's fine. We can work on that. Just anything you know you want, we can try to prep beforehand. No, we're good? Okay. Well, if you guys think of anything, you can always send emails. Like tonight, send an email off to Todd. Well, and then he'll direct it to me. I meant to him first, right? But